So invert, though, we already talked about the signal always going out positive. If you pass it through invert, it will be negative.
Okay.
So in this case that we have display full screen, I can say, hey, let's also put a delay on the invert of like 10 seconds, copy it down the chain, and send an inverted signal to a display full screen. Wait 5 seconds. Should. Really? You can. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
okay.
It removed it
Yeah.
because I sent a negative signal to that event, and that matters, right?
Yeah.
So that is now part of our toolbox.
Very cool.
Very simple, but like it's kind of the first step in introducing a little bit more complex of a concept, which is actually going to be now goals. So here's our variables. That's essentially what they are: the goal check, goal create, and goal set. Here's where we actually like start stepping into some meaty stuff.
Cool.
So the goal sets are basically modifiers to the variable we set by an increment of 1. So if I pass a single goal set, your variable went up by 1. So if I set goal is win condition, right? I name it win condition. When it gets hit, I set off everything for the players to win. If I say a set to win condition, it goes up by 1 integer, which the goal may be at 5. So I would want 5 of these to do it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
On a surface level, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll express it a little better. I now know. Set is the incrementer, right? If you want that number to go up or down. Goal create. This is to declare your variable. So this is basically setting it up because the game doesn't know what it is. I like doing a very dark color for this one. I'll actually go in my custom and do like this. Because it doesn't link to anything. You just have to say goal 1. Let's or test 1. Test 1, right? Let me write it down on the whiteboard because I've now declared test 1, right? That exists. It has a number of 0 right now. It even says right here, I could change that to 25 and start at 25, but let's be 0. Persistent means that this goal works between loads too. So you'll kind of start seeing what happens with that. Then we have goal check, which, as you could guess, is the gate, right? So if I have this in my logic, let's say in this case, we have the when dead go to a check first. Let's actually make this more straightforward, right? So, right, when this is a when dead, so this is the start of the event, and it's going to check to see if our minimum count is 5. Our declared variable has to be at 5 for that to be true. If not, it will not continue the signal on past it. So it's a filter, right?
Right.
Now, this one's kind of ridiculous because we're asking it at the very beginning. The very first thing that this program does is check to see if we've hit the variable. Of course not, right? But you can imagine that if we tie this into a key trick at like a door maybe that has a lock somewhere else, we can set in a variable for the lock saying on or off is like if it's 0, it's off. If it's 1, it's on. I can use these to push that number up and down and control the gate from one point to the other, right? Invert comes into play here because if you invert the signal to the set, you decrement, you do the opposite, you send it downwards. That was a great discovery that I'm pretty sure that was ice. So if I chain this and send something from here to there like that or something, or it would be actually more realistically from something like this, right? Then we're lowering this number, right? So here's a challenge. The challenge is that it wasn't built intuitively for logic. Like, it's all there. right? We have variables, we have events, but we're very restricted on the fact that our goal check has this word, minimum count.
Mm-hmm.
That means that 5 passes, 6 passes, 7 and beyond will always pass. So if your number is above 5, you can't control exactly 5, right?
I see.
That's a problem for our logic, because then how can we be like specific about equal to? How do we get that?
Right.
I mean, less than, I don't know how we'd factor that in, but equal to I think is much more important, because instead of trying to do a broad range, that'll allow us 100% control, right? Because ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to use negative numbers in our goals. And I'm going to make 2 of them. We're going to rename it. I actually call this one positive test and then negative test. They both start at 0, right? Well,
Mhm.
actually, I'll turn on my camera so I can do this simultaneously. All right. So we've created 2 variables, positive test and then negative test, right? Now, these are equal to 0 at the moment. It's good to note where they start because they don't have to, but that at least gives us a baseline because things will change. So if I have an event happen, what I want to do, because I can only check to see if it's basically less than or equal to is what it's doing, because it's minimum. It's checking for everything. Everything above will pass it and send a signal out. If I check to see first, is the positive test, let's say 3. If I also, in conjunction with 3, create on negative test is negative test -3. These 2 combined are equal to. There's some logic fun right there, right? But if you think about it, right, this right here has to be true as well as this being true at the same time.
I see.
So if minimum's 3, that means 4, 5, 6, 7, right?
It's like a
But if you
key
go,
gate.
but if you go -4, minimum doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this negative being introduced to it will solve the minimum problem by basically filtering any of those out. So you have to be on 3 and -3 now, and then it will work. So because I've declared a positive, I also need a negative test. It didn't do that. I can goal set. Let's build 2 of these. So this one's connected to a negative, so I'm going to do this one a negative test, right? Have this one go down. This one's going to be positive because it's not inversed, it will go up. But I've got 2 variables being pushed, right? And if I have a node, do this to them. Like this. When something hits this, it simultaneously pushes each one in their spot by 1, right? I usually line them up like this. So they kind of like look like this little simple fancy little box, right? The node starts, it inverts, it reduces negative, and it increases positive.
Okay.
So there's a check for the equal to kind of thing we're looking for, right? So if we have our goal checking, let's actually open up because I think we've gotten to the point where like this now starts coming together. Essentially all of these right here are a system of those. You could see this is labeled what I have phase plus and phase minus. So here's my node, right? I'll actually even pop it out to the side because it looks weird with that connection, right?
Right.
So this is just another node that's checking all of them, but I needed also them to trigger in line like this. So I put a node here. I said, first, are we checking? Are we at 0 on positive? Are we at 0 on negative? If that's true, it'll go out. Whoops. Ooh. There we go. Hi. But you follow what I mean. So like now I've got an equal to 0.
Right.
In this case, it's 1. In this case, it's 2.
Mm-hmm.
And -2, right? So in this case, it allowed me to do something like this. With this node, I hit all of them. But the only ones that will work are the ones that I'm in the phase of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is my spawner system. My spawns get routed to a key trick that fire all of these. It's basically asking the game, when I spawn in for this player, which I've labeled A3.
I see. Mm-hmm.
It goes
where
over to
are they?
3, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, there's player 3 right here. And these are all my key tricks. These are just links to other things.
Gotcha.
The first one, though, is spawn. Where are we in the game?
Right.
Once we've determined we're going this route, it goes to its own teleport event, which is why I have a bunch of these rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I do need a room for every single player in the game to spawn. So that's 32 rooms. But I also have all of these events going here and routing us through these and filtering out to a new keyframe. Did you see that, like right there? It went to the next one line, hits here, teleports them to the weapon that they chose, which is why there's 3. Weapon 1, weapon 2, weapon 3. If I got that weapon, you get that class, which it then goes back. You see it even hits them all, right?
Mm-hmm.
For this team at least, because that's this context. There's one down here for the red team too. But what it does is it hits this second column, which this is actually the one that puts them on the field. You'll notice that 0 doesn't even have one because in the first phase, you don't choose a weapon. You're in the lobby. You're stripped of a gun. You're just hitting the button at the same time to start the game. The game started, you should have a gun and you should be where you want to be, right?
Right.
So that sends it down right onto the field right there, as you can see.
Wow.
Teleport event. So this is a system where I'm essentially saying what part of the game we've won. Because if we've attacked all of these objectives and we're right here, then we need to spawn and teleport through this filter, right?
Right.
Incremental spawns.
Wow.
Then let's look at the gates, right?
Okay.
This is my logic here. So I don't know where. Oh, they're up here. See those really dark ones? I have start, pH plus, and pH minus. Those are the only variables I've declared in this entire level. These 3 are the workhorse for this whole thing. Because the pH, we already know, is a gate for equal to. Start is just basically the gate for have they hit both of the buttons. So here's the timeline for setting each phase. I just put them across here. And you can actually see with the structure, that's a space phone. We already went over that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the slay event, the slay object, to kill this space phone, which syncs it up with everyone in the server, because that object's gone. Newcomers will know that this is gone. All it does is send a signal to goal set plus for pH, and an invert, goal set minus. So we just pushed the variable up to 1. That's all it did. Right?
I see.
But that's all you need. There's also the push off to that last one on the end, right? Which is just play sound.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you move into phase 1, I want to play the exit menu sound.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a tone that we've entered the game.
That's cool.
So in that timing, I could say, oh, we just entered in phase 1. I just threw a sound there because it makes sense. It's a great place. It's not on any of the others.
Right.
But now these are all self-explanatory, right?
Right.
I bring up this example because this is like the pinnacle of my understanding things, right? Like I poured all of it into this. But like I'm saying, like it makes more sense now, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So phase gates synced up, right? We fire off the events. And basically, these happen every time you spawn, right? They're every time you die and come back, you get pushed through, and it asks what phase are you on. So if we're on 2, it's going to pass all of these. So it kind of runs itself at that point. The spawn is the catalyst.
I see.
In the case of this over here, I'll actually pull it in the 3D view and then show it that way. On the defender's side, their button is up front. I know for sure the other one's down here. I'll just use this one as the example. Oh no, they're both here. This is an earlier build. This wasn't the final for sure because I was testing by putting both switches next to each other. Because I'm by myself. I don't want to run two clients and have to switch between in a 5-second window to see if they work.
Sure. Cool.
So I spawned in. So at the beginning of this area, I have two meshes. The first mesh is static, the podium. The second one actually is using like the vines so you can walk through it. It's a hologram.
Sweet. That's awesome.
But these are two meshes with a keyframe spinner. So that's kind of straightforward. That's more of like the Blender side of things doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I show it here because over here it doesn't look like that at all because I have to do swap model events with two meshes. But there you go.
Okay.
One is the podium. There's the cables dangle that are the sign. On these guys, though, when you hit the button on them, they get checked with this event system over here, and I'll just stay in 3D for it. But I'm basically doing this kind of like goal set and then goal retreat kind of thing. So the event is start. It starts at 0. But when I check it, where's the goal check? Let me see. Goal check. I'm asking for 2 minimum, right? So this won't happen unless both of those buttons are turned on, which increment by 1, right? But what I wanted it to do is I wanted it to be like a check saying like, are you ready? Oh, you're not? Okay, cool. Let's reset, let's hang out and let's send another request later. And if within a 5-second period both teams hit the button together, I consider that to be an agreement, So we're just focused on this bottom section right here for the moment, right? Because here's the node. And I do send out a couple. Let me actually like it sends out one over here and it sends out one over here, which this is a check. And this is a place sound. So it's really a confirmation. There's like a little whistle. It's called weird.wave. It's one of the Metal Gear sounds originally. They called it weird. I kept it weird. But so the node's a nothing thing that just passes, but I'll explain the check in a second. But what it's mainly doing here is it's going to go down this line in an L shape. And what it says is goal set, start. So that pushed the variable for startup by 1, right? Halfway to its goal, which you can imagine the other team is right there, right? But then I put a delay on my invert of 5 seconds, so 5 seconds will pass, then it'll go back down, essentially turning itself off.
Okay.
And that's the end of that line, because then it's going to hit another input, do the same thing. It'll be on, 5 seconds off. But I also put on here a check. So after it gets hit, it's going to wait a half second because that's longer than the node. First, the variable will be pushed. So you hit the button, variable goes up, and then within a half second, literally, it'll say, did we do it? Both ends have it. So if I hit the button and you're in the 5 interval here, it's going to say, did we do it? 2? Yeah? Go. Play the sound. You get the equip sound from Metal Gear. It slays my object, which is synced. Listening to When Dead, which you all now know what we're doing here, right? We've basically gated with a little timeline a signal to say, awesome, let's go. This is a switch right here. This is to do the kill states. We've already covered that, but that's not as important as this one right here. So I started basically a chain of events right here.
Whoa.
This looks wild, right? But it's really just kind of a zigzag.
Oh, I see.
If you follow it all the way down, goes up, invert, off. So what we're doing here is a cutscene. It says, play the sound. VR intro. The Konami intro plays that. Do, do, do.
Oh,
do,
yeah.
Do, do. So that starts. That has its own timeline, right? Which was delayed by 3 seconds. So we have to get a confirm. it pauses a second, and then the credits start. Like it's got a, like that dramatic kind of beginning of the film hesitation. I wait 1 second. Or no, this is a node. I should just call this node. It doesn't matter. I'm not saving this, but it's a node, right? I don't need the node now that I look at it, but it was probably just to keep things tidy. So it's a nothing thing. Continue the signal. This is 1, I call it. It's a display full screen image event for VR Fade 1, which is basically the entire screen is blacked out with only 10% opacity. So that's why it's 1. As you could tell, I wait a tenth of a second and then display 2, 20%, 30%, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Total blackout. So I've got a fade here. This is a fader.
Yeah.
In fact, let me. So they have swap states on the events, which you can already. You don't even have to look at the code. You can see that I just did a swap model with a different sign, right? But 5 seconds pass, you'll see it changes from ready to waiting. So it's an indicator. If I hit this one and I hit this one, they're both ready.
Oh, yeah.
3 seconds pass. There's your fade. The title's there. An invert is also on there to remove it. But also I've broken my game logic because I took away the kill thing to reset me, because in single player that would just put you to the credits and then start you up in the single player campaign.
Right.
But you also see I removed the pedestals.
Yeah.
After the event. So you can already see all of the events kind of chaining together to make this come together, right? This is kind of just like, because I think we've like hit like the pretty much all of it, or at least all of enough to like now explore within it.
Yeah.
But the last example of logic that I have in this map that I have in front of me is another example of some ideas that I had and scrapped, but then kept some things. But this is basically, you can see I have all the same number of phases here, but I have numbers going downward. This is actually time.
Okay.
So each one of these are 30-second intervals. So this happens at 0. This one happens at 30. I actually have it labeled. Then later another 30, another 30. Then in the 5 category on, it's 10. And then when we hit 10, it's 1. And what I'm doing is, there was a restriction for this event that I stick strict to, and I'm not blaming anyone else. This is overkill to hit it. But this game only runs 15 minutes. Unless you sit in the lobby and extend it, because you could see there's no timer on these. Each one of these sections are 2.5 minutes exactly. If the attackers cannot destroy all of the targets within 2.5 minutes, they lose, which is L down here, right? So this is kind of like total control of every second of the gameplay now, right? Because I've got this lined up, when the phase 1 hits, it will chain off globally. These are nodes, but they actually have delay in them on some of them, but the first one, nothing. So it's going to slay, space phone, win dead. So you got to sync here, right? Everyone gets this. This I decided I wasn't going to do. I just never removed it. I had an idea of destroying and killing events before it. So like if somebody joined way down here, all of this didn't happen at once, you know? Like I was making self-destructing code. Because I was running into that problem of like, I want stuff to happen at specific times, but then people joining in late have terrible experiences because too much stuff is happening. And if it's buggy, all of it's going to happen at once. And that's going to be bad. So yeah, I tried doing slay object. I probably could have done remove object. That might have been something that could have made it better, but you can actually it's still here. You could see as it goes down, it's connected to the node above it, which I call sync. It has a, it's behind a delay right here. So let me go down the line here, so it's not super confusing for no reason. Here's the sink, right? When dead, then it's gonna wait a little bit because it needs a little bit of time to kill everything before it runs. Because what I'm doing is saying this will happen right away. It'll kill this, but because this is still waiting a half second, it's already gone, right? It won't continue.
Okay.
So because this is still intact and it wasn't destroyed because it was only this one that we were at, then I would do a phase check. Am I still in phase 0? I did one of these for each phase. Am I in phase?
Interesting.
That's broken. They're all in zeros. This is an
Mhm.
older version, that's why.
Okay.
I eventually had to set all these. I would set this one to 1, 2, 4, and 5 because I skipped
Okay.
3 and 6. But it's going to check to see if am I in that phase and are we at this time? Because this will always go. But if we, let's say, this amount of time in, move on to the next phase, it's going to keep going, but it's going to say, oh, but we're not at that phase anymore, so stop, on every
Yeah.
one of these. So essentially, I created a timeline that once we got to the very end, would push the logic's not here because, again, not done, but it would push the game to a state where it would move all the players to the end game zone where the capture flags are for the winners.
Ah, I
You can
see.
see
Mm-hmm.
the winners all spawn in a room with the flags. They determine how long the lobby stays open at the end.
Oh,
Because
okay.
they just cap and it's over. Losers just get to hang out in this lobby.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So they all get to yell at each other for a little bit about how crap they did at defending or attacking or whatever. But yeah, so that was kind of like, yeah, I even put the L up on it and the W on it.
Nice.
I mean, that explained literally the entire logic for this whole map, right? Because you can kind of piece together this stuff now. If you actually, like, it's a lot, but you can go and follow the paths and say, oh, I'm inverting a particle state of this objective. What it is when this is destroyed, I turn off the particle emitter because it's gone. Like, it shouldn't be glowing in space for no reason, right?
I see. Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of like start breaking it down. Like, this says heal, right? I actually had a system on it where if the defenders stood around this, it would tick over time and give it health back.
Wow.
Just to kind of create a new dynamic in it. It never came to. I didn't finish that. But they're all built for it, just, no time.
Interesting.
But yeah, that I think that's pretty much the core of it. I'm trying to think on other fun things. The elevator was a fun thing. Let me show you that. In real life, I'm actually an elevator nerd, so it's kind of ironic that I'm getting excited about elevators here too, in just the same way. Uh, uh, the elevator logic and the keyframes, it's a great example of what you can get away with. Because I have this thing set up with the behavior that once we're in this phase, it starts going. Actually, if you remember at the beginning, I said when dead was a global thing. It just started, right?
Mm.
It hits this one first from the wind dead. I'll just say it does, right? But it is also key tricked. You can see I hit almost 30,000 on my number on this map to do a node, which opens the doors. So essentially, when you get to this, it hits an event that opens the doors and then will close them again on the way out.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the way this was, yeah, because it's set to a ping pong infinite. Every time it stops and starts, it triggered it. So I set this to do a loop once. So it goes trigger one, trigger back every time it hits a signal. So it would stop, open, leave, and close at the same time. But it comes down, and you can do that individually, key tricking the next node at every level, right? So you can actually chain these things with multiple phases using like a ping pong infinite. So it would behave. But yeah, you can see I hit that. It triggered that key trick. Once it went again, it triggered it back.
Wow, that's cool.
And
Wow.
because the phase in itself is synced, that synced up the elevator with everyone. Or at least should have. I don't know. But yeah, like that's a pretty like neat little effect to like have this just kind of going.
Yeah.
And I thought like you could use like again use key triggers to go that far, but I figured that I had hit this much success that I'd probably not fly too close to the sun and just call it a win, right? Because I'd say this is one of my like prouder things, even though it's just an elevator. It's like,
That is cool.
oh, I can actually hear it healing.
Wow.
It's playing the heal sound when I walk near it. Yeah, there. See, look at that glow.
Wow, that's cool.
I think that's it.
Cool.
I can't really think of anything else that like is crazy. Like the rest of it is kind of just like your imagination and like using those conditions to now have the ability to like do things, you know?
Yeah, these are the tools.
Yeah. Like if you want doors to interact and you want full control over them, now you actually have catalyst events and extra controls, you know?
Yeah. Very cool.
Cool.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's a great great wealth of knowledge.
It was quite a bit, but
awesome.
I'm glad to share it. That was cool.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.